Match that will decide Good morning and welcome to another match in the public sector debate competition. I'm Aniki Clark, communication lead here in the TIU, and I'm excited that you could have joined us for this match. It's a match that is very important because it will decide the teams, the final teams that make it through to the octafinals. This morning we have in proposition the Jamaica Customs Agency. Give them a round of applause, make them feel welcome. And the Administrator General's Department. They will be debating the moods. Be it resolved that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. Be it resolved that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. But just to say that this is a safe space for debating. The teams are advancing views for and against the moot, not necessarily their own views. So don't hold them hostage when they get back to their places of work. It's, it's a debate competition. So let's get to meet the teams, starting with the Jamaica Customs Agency.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Matthew Smith-Barrett.
Kingsley Henry.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am actually Kabura.
Thank you very much, Team Proposition. Let's now get to meet Team Admin Gen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Lewis.
Morning, everyone. I am Cudian King.
Hello, everyone. I am Marissa Moore.
All right, thank you. And you would notice that they're all clad in black, but it's not a burial this morning. It definitely isn't. We're going to have a lively, spirited debate because this touches the core of the public service. And judging this match are our adjudicators from the Jamaican Association for Debating and Empowerment. And I will now invite the judges to introduce themselves.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Ravon Thomas Matthews, and I'll be the chair judge for this round.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lacardigo Nelson, also serving as a wing. All the best to all teams.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roshana Jarrett, and I'll be serving as your other wing adjudicator for this match.
Thank you very much, judges. And the teams are familiar with the rules, but just Ravon will take you through for our audience online. All that's left for me to do at this point is to wish both teams good luck.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so let's get this debate underway. So, of course, we'll be debating the Jade parliamentary format that will see first speakers presenting for 7 minutes, second speakers, you'll have 6 minutes to present your case, and the third and final speakers from each team, you'll have 5 minutes. It's important to note that the first and last minute of the first 2 speeches are considered protected time, in which no points of information will be allowed. Outside of those 2 periods of protected time, points of information are not only allowed, but they're actually encouraged. Of course, during the third speeches from either team, we will not be accepting any points of information. You will hear the bell ding to indicate your time signals. One ding of the bell means that you have exited your first period. It's going to sound like this. There you go. That means that you've used up a minute and points of information are now open. You're going to hear the bell ding again when you've exited your final minute and the windows for points of information are closed. After you've used up all of your allocated time, you're going to hear the bell ding twice. That means that you have, again, used up all your allocated time, but perhaps you're in the middle of a really pressing and important thought that you want to get out. We're going to give you 15 seconds to do that. After that 15 seconds, you're going to hear the bell ding continuously, which means that you should yield the floor to your opponents. Now, between the first sets of speakers and the second sets of speakers, we're going to be having 2 periods of cross-examination. But I'll tell you more about that when we get to that part of the debate. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the moot before this House reads once more, be it resolved that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. It is my privilege to open this debate, and to do so, we invite the first speaker from the Jamaica Customs Agency. Please make welcome Matthew Smith-Barnes.
Madam Chair, honorable judges, worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, the motion before the House is be it resolved that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. And Madam Chair, we on the proposition proudly support this motion. And I'll just make one thing clear from the very beginning. This debate is not about attacking public servants, punishing workers, nor is it about cutting people's livelihoods. This debate is about modernizing Jamaica's public service so that productivity, efficiency, innovation, and performance are properly rewarded. Now, today as first speaker, I will define the motion, explain why Jamaica is behind modern global public sector compensation systems, and establish why productivity-based incentives are necessary for national development. Our second speaker will speak on the implementation of the policy, safeguards to protect workers while strengthening governance and fairness, and the individual impacts of the reform. Thereafter, our rebuttal speaker will expose the weaknesses and contradictions in the opposition's defense of an outdated compensation structure. Madam Chair, for the purposes of this debate, the proposition defines the moot as follows. Jamaica should modernize its public sector compensation structure by eliminating its reliance on fixed salaries and instead placing greater emphasis on performance-based compensation that rewards efficiency, innovation, accountability, and quality service delivery. By reduced salaries, we do not mean eliminating salaries or reducing workers into poverty. We mean reducing the over-reliance on a fixed compensation system that increases automatically regardless of its output. And by performance-based incentives, we mean structured financial rewards tied to measurable performance indicators. And by public service, we simply mean ministries, departments, and agencies funded by taxpayers responsible for delivering service to the Jamaican people. Now, Madam Chair, Jamaicans are frustrated with dealing with public services. They experience long lines, outdated approvals, poor communication, and unnecessary bureaucracy. And the uncomfortable truth is that our current compensation structure rewards time and tenure, not results. And the public sector compensation fixed structure is fast outpacing the nation's ability to afford it. So whether the service improves or worsens, someone works exceptionally hard or merely does the minimum, or targets are achieved or missed, the compensation is the same, and that is unfair. And the average
Point of
Jamaican
information.
understands fairness. Apologies, I can't accept it right now. I have a lot to get through, my worthy opponents. Now, fairness means performance should matter. So our first claim today is performance-based incentives reduce waste and improve efficiency. Jamaica's public sector wage bill exceeds $500 billion annually, which is over 40% of the total annual budget. Yet the Auditor General reports up to 2024 continue to show weak target achievement across ministries, departments, and agencies. When we look to South Korea and their civil service post the 1900s, 1990 to be exact, they implemented pay reforms. What they did, they cut base pay by 15% and introduced bonuses for up to 40% of key performance indicators like service delivery. And what was the result? Productivity soared by 25% in only 5 years as per World Bank data. In Jamaica, you imagine a teacher incentivized for the pass rates in external exams of their students, or healthcare workers for vaccination targets where they are required to be a part of the positive messaging on the benefits of vaccines and not just giving a joke to patients. We would see output jump and waste drop. Now, our opponents may try to make that sound radical, but the world has already proven that this works. Again, I can't accept at this moment. Countries such as New Zealand, Canada, Rwanda, and Singapore, Kenya even, all modernized their public sector compensation system decades ago by linking advancements to rewards. And the message from all of them was the same: government performs better when performance is rewarded. And that is why this motion matters. Because efficiency in government affects everyday life. And there's an age-old adage that a rising tide raises all ships. And that's what an incentivized public sector is: a rising tide that directly affects national development. If a business license that normally takes 3 months can be completed in 2 weeks from workers who are incentivized to perform efficiently, that helps economic growth. If procurement systems move quicker, roads, schools, hospitals, Cornwall Regional gets completed faster. Now let's address another important issue. This motion does not eliminate fixed salaries. What we are proposing is a balanced system that supports the moot of reducing base salaries. But when we say reduce, we are not advocating for a present cut in base salaries. We agree that all public servants must be earning a livable wage, and the recent compensation review assisted in achieving some semblance of that reality. So what we are proposing is a reduction achieved through holding the current salaries where they are and modifying the mixture of future salary increases to be based on productivity of the public service and the public servant, more incentive-based pay being on a percentage of your current salary, and bonus payments and special allowances based on performance. Now, essentially, this will amount to achieving reducing of the base pay, but over time, through inflation, and countering that inflationary effect through productivity bonuses that the hard-working public sector worker will be motivated to achieve on a consistent basis. Wages will then only be based on wage increases will only be based on a cumulative inflation over a 5-year period instead of annually. And what we are proposing is a win-win for the general public and the public servant, where they will be able to earn more through their own industry and collaboration. Now, under this policy proposal, public servants will still have stable incomes, job security, pensions, and benefits. But a greater portion of future compensation will depend on the achievement of smart results. A comprehensive World Bank study of 2025 of 110 countries correlated 1% increase in public sector productivity to a 0.5% increase in private sector productivity. And in Jamaica, that equates to $15 billion in increased private sector GDP, or $4 billion in increased tax revenues. These figures are important because we know our opposition will be coming with a funding and financing argument. But we were the opponents, have run the numbers and we've done the math. Our proposal in achieving just 1% of increased public sector productivity eliminates 25% of the recent round of tax increases that the government just implemented. We would literally be going back to no new taxes and greater tax relief for all of us. Madam Chair, if excellence is rewarded, excellence isn't rewarded, it leaves. And this is where the brain drain that our worthy opponents will raise comes from. That is one reason Jamaica's public sector loses its talented people to overseas markets and the private sector. Earlier I said, rising tides raises all ships. but I left out one important part. If that ship as a whole, it will sink under the rising tide. That whole will be addressed by my second speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now invite the first speaker from the Administrator General's Department.
My opponents, it looks like I need to lend you my glasses because your policy is a bit short-sighted. No matter how you reword it and reframe it and call it modernizing and reducing over time, the fact of the matter is you should be reducing. Your policy is suggesting a reduction in base salaries. So, Madam Chair, Mr. Speaker, fellow debaters, esteemed audience, good morning. As opposition, we categorically reject this reckless notion that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. Make no mistake, this is not a reform, this is not modernization, this is a gamble, one that trades security with speculation and places 250,000 plus public sector workers at risk. It's a revolt in the making. The proposition wants to build incentives on quicksand. As the wise men built their house upon the rock, though, let team opposition show you how to be wise. I will now demonstrate three things. First, that this proposed policy will trigger catastrophic brain drain, highlight the real economic loss to the people, and third, that the Jamaica's reality is not equipped to deal with this system and will further descend into a pervasive incentive scheme which induces significant levels of corruption. My second speaker, Ms. King, will expand on the psychological impacts, moral and ethical costs, and expand on our alternative model. And our third speaker, Ms. Moore, will solidify in your minds why the proposition's policy fails comprehensively and how we would have won this debate. We will agree with the proposition's definitions put forward, except where they describe reduction in salary, how they've put it forward. But let us be clear, we're not against rewards and new policies and reducing it over time. We simply wish to protect 100% of base salaries and layer structured, measured incentives on top, because you cannot build performance on a foundation of insecurity. So let's share some wisdom. Reducing base salaries in our public sector workers will immediately destabilize retention and accelerate migration. My opponent has mentioned brain drain because the public servants in Jamaica do not operate like private sales agents chasing commissions. They rely on stability and sustainability because their roles are complex and socially critical. In the UNDP's 2026 Development and Democracy Report for Latin America and the Caribbean, it was noted that 54% of the population intends to leave the country within the next 3 years. So imagine the future Jamaica if we are to adopt the proposition's policy on an already weak system, one that they are ignoring. It will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Little to no police force, no customs officers protecting our borders, no estate administrators. This is supported in a 2012 OECD report entitled The Public Sector Compensation in Times of Austerity, warning that while wage cuts may help governments save in the long term, you hear our opponents mention the wage bill, I wanted to note that because it actually creates workplace shortages and institutional weaknesses later on. Team proposition is suggesting a panacea claiming to give employees control over their wage and tie this with performance to ensure all-around benefits. But that's merely false pretense, because in reality, what we'll obtain at best is a worker chasing down an ever-moving carrot on a stick to ensure stability from month to month. Eventually, my opponent here must agree that they will get tired of chasing. Or wise truth number 2. The proposed system implies a heavy financial burden on the Jamaican people, and it will increase the nation's wage bill. The proposition implies with their policy that there are no trade-offs. But consider, in Jamaica, financial institutions calculate debt-to-income ratios based on your base salary. Reducing it impairs the ability of civil servants to access mortgages, simple benefits from the banks, or pensions calculated on our base salary will also be affected. Prime Minister Holness, in his contribution to the budget debate of this year, warned that further wage increases must be carefully calibrated to avoid undermining the country's broader economic stability. The approach to be taken by the proposition does just that, as it increases our wage bill if workers continuously surpass these targets to receive these higher incentives they propose. If we follow them, the economy will be as a ship in turbulent waters, swaying with the currents of an uncertain public sector. That's not meritocracy. That's income volatility disguised as policy. It's very shaky ground. It's very unwise. A word of wisdom number 3. Suggesting a higher performance-based incentive to public sector workers is fundamentally unsound, their whole system, because performance measurements are inherently flawed and vulnerable to manipulation, particularly within Jamaica's deeply bureaucratic system. Let us compare. In the private sector, driven primarily by profit, performance incentives often take the form of commissions, and employees' knowledge, skill, and effort directly determines their output. The public sector, conversely, is driven by service delivery, as they've mentioned, and outcomes, we must note, depends heavily on factors outside of the employee's control. Yet proposition wants to impose a model that rewards, so they say, or penalizes employees largely on meeting arbitrary targets or metrics. Yes, aspects of the work may be quantifiable, but is it an accurate reflection of employees' day-to-day contributions? Can one rigid metric fairly apply across the broad public sector? Does it account for the understaffed departments, outdated systems, and overworked employees operating without adequate resources? It's not a tenure issue, it's a resource issue. In reality, performance pay punishes the under-resourced rather than rewarding excellence. And Mr. Speaker, we've already seen the dangers of pervasive target-driven public sector systems. I'm appalled that that proposition would mention Rwanda when in their performance contract framework, public officials were aggressively evaluated against state performances, where initially they were praised for improving accountability, but later assessments revealed growing problems of distorted reporting, metric gaming, and officials prioritizing numerical targets not accepted at this time. Workers will become more concerned with satisfying the system than serving the people, forced to go against the spirit of the public sector. Mr. Speaker, what obtained in Rwanda will surely obtain in Jamaica if we start with a reduction in base salaries. In conclusion, it is high time we do away, it's high time we do away with this archaic notion of public sector workers that are underperforming and lazy, because many public sector entities are ISO certified, meeting international standards of excellence, with more to come. To say that this system addresses the problem is the problem. Fix it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the debate has started in fine fashion.
Excuse. The second to last minute bell wasn't rung. Oh, he apologized. That's fine.
All right. There we go. All right. So let us dive, therefore, into the first period of cross-examination. In this segment, we'll see the team Administrator General's Department pose 3 questions to the team in proposition. Each question will be limited to 10 seconds, and each answer will be limited to 45 seconds. It's important to note that only one person may ask a question at a time, but the entire team can answer that question. All right. After Admin GDs has asked their 3 questions and they've been answered, we'll invite the Customs Agency to do the same. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we invite the first question from Team Admin GD.
My opponents, if the wage bill is the issue, why not reduce political spending and administrative waste before cutting workers' guaranteed salaries?
Opposition, that is an easy answer, and we always go to that as public sector workers. Look at what politicians get and what they do. The fact is that the trajectory of wage increases in Jamaica is unsustainable, and if we continue this way, we're going back to the days of wage freezes and ultimately massive cuts in the public sector. So we need to decide on reform or steer the course, and public sector workers will suffer more in the end.
My opponent, should a teacher in an under-resourced inner city school earn less than one in a privileged area because of outcomes beyond their control?
So opponents, the second speaker will deal with that substantively because the performance-based system that we are talking about will have safeguards. And one of those safeguards is ensuring that if the government does not provide the resources, workers are not penalized. The fact that there are flaws and that there are limitations is not a reason for not implementing reform. So teachers will not will suffer. Public sector workers will not suffer because the resources are not provided by government. Our system and our framework contemplates that, and there are safeguards that are built in to ensure that they don't.
My opponent, is your policy proposing a wage freeze or a reduction in base salaries as purported by the motion?
As I articulated in my initial presentation, it is not a wage freeze. It's a modification and mix of the compensation structure where the persons will be able to earn more going forward through their own industry while holding current salaries, which because of inflation will see a reduction, but it will not be a true reduction where they're seeing a cut in their salaries because they will be able to hold that salary and earn more going forward.
Thank you very much. Now, at this point in time, we invite the 3 questions from the Jamaica Customs Agency.
Your first speaker hinged their argument on brain drain, but aren't those workers being induced and attracted to countries and sectors that promote the same incentive bonus compensation structure with lower guaranteed base pay, such as our teachers? Your first speaker hinged their argument on brain drain, but aren't those workers being induced and attracted to countries and sectors that promote the same incentive-based compensation structure with lower guaranteed base pay, such as our teachers?
My opponent, that plays right into the argument that we are making, that incentive is not the proper driver. That is why they are leaving anyways. The proper driver is resources. Our teachers are leaving because there are 50 students to 1 teacher in every classroom. And when they go overseas, that 50 turn into 25. So my opponent saying that the teachers are leaving anyways with similar incentive structure plays into the argument that we're making, that incentive is not the main driver of productivity, especially in the public sector that is service-based and not profit-based.
If 2 workers produce vastly different results, should they receive nearly identical compensation?
Yeah, my opponent, again, you are ignoring an entire part of the moot that says that you will reduce base pay to facilitate this. We are saying make the metrics more measurable, give each worker equitable pay based on the work that they put in, yes, but do not freeze the wages to do so. Do not reduce the base wages to do so. That is what this motion is surrounding.
And I will also add my opponents that there are different realities that each worker faces. So just because I output my colleague works one way, I may not work the other way because of maybe I am facing an illness during that period. I should not be penalized by that, and my base pay should not be affected either.
What are the real economic and social costs of delays, inefficiency, and bureaucracy in the public service?
The real cost is not burdened by the public sector officials, it's burdened by the government itself. They're the ones that need to fix the problems, and public sector workers are not the ones that should pay that cost.
And my opponent, and my opponent would also like to disabuse you of the notion that public sector workers are just the laziest, dragging their foot, and we need to cut their wages to get some fire under them, as we have multiple public sector agencies, as my first speaker mentioned, that are ISA certified, that are meeting the standard of output. And what we are suggesting is, yes, to reform the system, yes, make it more measurable, but do not freeze the wages to do so, and do not reduce the wages to do so. You have been unable to explain.
And thank you very much for that first period of cross-examination. Can we get a round of applause for both our teams? Now, at this point in time, we invite the second speaker from the Jamaica Customs Agency. Please make welcome Kingsley Henry. Here. Angelina, please, you are our second speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Madam Speaker, the opposition has cast this reform as unfair, unmeasurable, or unsafe for under-resourced ministries. That is a misrepresentation. The opposition is concerned about arbitrary targets. We are not proposing arbitrary bonuses or subjective judgments. We are advocating a structured modernization of the existing PMAS framework, reinforced with clear safeguards, oversight, and standardized evaluation mechanisms. So let's dissect this. Our model explicitly incorporates resource floor complementation. This means performance is not assessed in isolation, but within the real operational conditions provided by the state. Where a ministry fails to provide the necessary tools for work, whether functioning equipment, digital systems, transport, adequate staffing, or basic operational support, our model accounts for those constraints in the evaluation process. In effect, our model ensures that no worker is unfairly penalized for institutional failure beyond their control. Our model also directs, thank you for that. Go ahead.
My opponent, so why not fix those issues before you go ahead and freeze their wages and reduce it?
Thank you for that question. It will be further addressed in my speech. Our model directly guards against favoritism, victimization, and political bias through strong institutional safeguards. Trade unions are involved from the design stage to ensure transparency and worker protection from the onset. We also propose an independent performance management commission to oversee implementation, monitoring, evaluation, periodic review, and dispute resolution. Under our model, performance targets are jointly agreed between employees and supervisors at the start of each cycle, ensuring clarity and mutual understanding. PMAS is also continuous, not annual only, with quarterly reviews to track progress, address challenges, and make adjustments where needed. This makes performance management developmental rather than punitive. And crucially, disputes over performance evaluations follow established internal channels with the option to escalate to an independent commission, ensuring fairness and accountability. Now, let us address the issue of the implementation and the cost effectiveness of this reform. The opposition voiced concerns about the wage bill. When we examine the public sector wage bill, we have three choices: maintain wage freezes, continue with an oversized public sector, or restructure compensation to prioritize performance over base pay. Our motion commits to the latter, reducing base salaries in favor of performance-based incentives. But this is not merely a financial adjustment. It is the strategic foundation for a disciplined, results-driven public sector where accountability and efficiency are operational imperatives. In governance, as on the battlefield, as a soldier would tell you, structure without discipline is chaos. Implementation begins by categorizing every job function across the public sector, grouping similar roles so that employees performing substantially similar work operate under consistent standards. This ensures fairness, equity, and clarity of expectation. No longer will two workers performing identical duties face divergent evaluations or pay. And from these categories, we develop smart performance targets and KPIs. So they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound that reflect the real demands of each role. And some positions lend themselves to quantitative metrics, such as project completion rates, backlog reduction, or service turnaround times. Other roles, especially in leadership and even security for border security, we have to encounter intelligence coordination and threat interdiction capabilities to tackle transnational organized crime activities. And then one would ask, what incentives would be set up for a system that would be implemented such as this? So, honorable judges, in our first speaker's presentation, he noted that what our proposal seeks to do in achieving this reduction motion is to hold the current salaries as the starting base, and that further increases will be based on the overall productivity increases of the public service and ingenuity and performance of the public servant. But what does this look like, you may ask? With a current base of $2 million for an employee, he would expect to see over a 5-year period an automatic incremental increase of 12.5% to 13% on their salary. Maybe a union negotiated increase of 10% over that same 5-year period, a total of 23% in 5 years in the base, approximately $492,000 in total new salary. However, with the incentivized performance-based mix as proposed by my first speaker, at an even additional 10% for above average performance annually, plus 3% for department performance and 2% for ministry performance, that worker would see his $2 million per year convert to $2.3 million per annum, or an additional $1.5 million in 5 years, and not have to wait until 5 years down the road to earn that single additional $492,000 in salary. Essentially, earning 3 times what they would earn at the end. Now, if that doesn't sound like a motivator to you, I don't know what is. Now, by combining the reduced base pay with performance incentives, structured evaluation, safeguards, and transparent oversight, this implementation framework transforms the public sector into a force capable of executing national priorities with discipline, speed, and accountability. And in the language of national security, this is not reform for convenience. It is a strategic reinforcement of Jamaica's operational sustainability and advancement. So let it be clear, we are not rewarding attendance, we are rewarding contribution. We are not preserving routine, we are enforcing performance. We are not maintaining a system, we are strengthening the state, our sovereign Jamaican state. Honorable judges, distinguished viewers in person and online, and members of the opposition, I urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We now invite the second speaker from Team Admin GD. Please make welcome Julian King.
Checking for the correct paper this time. Okay. All right. Whenever I'm ready. All protocols observed. Mr. Speaker, when you thief cow from poor people, you take the calf too. And that is what team proposition is asking us to do. Raid the public sector of the little they have. We will not do that. Mr. Speaker, the proposition came up here and they took us to maths class. They tell us 3 times the amount earning now in 5 years. That nice, see? The proposition gave us what already exists in the system, the oversight. But what they failed to do, the burden of the motion, is to explain why is it that we should freeze wages, thus reducing them to facilitate this. Mr. Speaker, the proposition attempts to sell up the pipe dream of modernization and digitization, but we're already doing so. Mr. Speaker, check RGD and RGD current output, and they didn't have to freeze anybody wage to do so. Now, let's get into our substantive. Claim 1, Mr. Speaker, base salaries provide stability. Performance pay does not. Cutting base salaries will kill the psychological safety, and when psychological safety dies, teamwork and innovation dies with it. Mr. Speaker, the public sector is not a call center. It's not a factory. It runs on trust, and trust runs on stability. The 2015 Inter-America Development Bank study on the Caribbean public sector found that 71% of civil servants ranked a stable income as the #1 factor for job performance. Not bonuses and not a pizza party, a stable income. Mr. Speaker, the proposition is asking us to believe that you can starve a worker into excellence. Team opposition said that argument is not just flawed, it is dishonorable and impossible. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear at what a base salary does. It creates what economists call a psychological safety net. A 2019 Public Service International report showed that when public servants with secure pay were 42% more likely to report corruption, 55% more likely to stay past 5 years, and 58% more likely to mentor young mentees. Mr. Speaker, that is institutional memory, and that is how government is run. Mr. Speaker, the Work Foundation study found that when you tie pay to metric, workers stop asking what is right and start asking what is rewarded. Excellent example of this was shown in Kenya, where the pay for performance help pilot system hit their target in the first year, where every clinic met their vaccine target. But they had to pull nurses from the maternity ward to do so. Mr. Speaker, in that same year, maternity death rose to over 6% in that district. Can you imagine that? Mr. Speaker, by replacing certainty with performance-based incentive, we risk also trading intrinsic motivation for widespread demoralization. We propose that we keep the base salary structure as is to ensure a productive, satisfied, and sustainable workforce. Warrant 2. Mr. Speaker, cutting base pay comes at a moral and ethical cost. It breaks the state promise to people who hold this country together. Mr. Speaker, base pay is not a line item. It is how public sector workers fund their livelihood. A 2023 Statin survey on living conditions found that 61% of Jamaica public sector households have less than 1 month savings. Cutting base pay means pushing 6 in every 10 public sector workers past their financial brink. That again is unjust, unfair, and immoral. Additionally, a recent 2024 survey at the UIMONA Department of Government Studies on public sector motivation found that 74% of workers said that pay uncertainty was the top driver of their anxiety and it reduces their service quality. And that is right here at home, Mr. Speaker. And finally, let us talk about ethics. Mr. Speaker, the state demands that citizens pay their taxes on time, obey the law, and trust institutions. But when the state tells its workers that right now we're freezing you, your rent is optional, it loses its moral authority to demand excellence. Go ahead.
Do you believe that the current trajectory of public sector wage bill, which is almost 50% of tax revenue, is sustainable?
Mr. Speaker, again, we come with our own proposition, so we don't believe that right now the pay-for-performance system is in ideal shape, but reforming it and cutting base pay before the reformation is what we're against. It's what the motion requires that we be against. We're not cutting base pay first and then reforming after. We're reforming first. Mr. Speaker, continuing, the IMF did warn Jamaica of this very issue in 2022, where it said that wage instability in essential services undermine institutional legitimacy and reduce motivation. Mr. Speaker, the ethical cost is not abstract. It is this generation of public sector workers viewing the government as a bad employer. It is the best and brightest minds choosing a private bank over a ministry because at least there they have a guaranteed, stable paycheck. Mr. Speaker, team opposition is not saying do nothing. We are saying don't break the foundation of the very people that this country rely on. Let's take a look at our model. The stability accelerator model that suggests that we fix the PPP by retaining workers, protecting pension, and maintaining public sector dignity. Mr. Speaker, we cannot do this if we cut base pay first. Under this model, we will blend objective data and subjective data for quality review, ensure that there is equitable distribution of resources, because you cannot run the same race if you start 100 meters behind someone else. And we will also pay incentive on time, as that is one of the major issues in the pay for performance system. Mr. Speaker, this motion destroys the psychological net that keeps public servants committed to service. Cut base pay and you don't create motivation or teamwork. You create insecurity at a moral cost that Jamaica cannot afford. Mr. Speaker, team opposition says base pay is dignity. And excellence without security is exploitation. We're not cutting base pay first. We're not freezing it. We're not signing off on that. Team opposition pauses.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the second period of cross-examination. This time, however, we will invite the questions to be first fielded by the Jamaica Customs Agency.
Worthy opponents, over the last 4 decades, the PIOG has indicated that Jamaica public service productivity has declined by 0.5% annually under the current model. What have you proposed to address this productivity decline?
My opponents, the simple answer is the reform of the public sector, reform of the resources that we have, because our productivity is tied to what we have. We can only work with what you give us. Fix the resources, give us more staff to work with, fix the technological advances, but don't cut our pay. It's not the answer.
And my opponent, in addition to that, the only thing different that your model has proposed is rate freeze and cutting the pay. All the other things would have existed right now and would need to be reformed. The independent oversight, etc.
It's rich to talk about resources, but 50% of that resources go to salary. Where is the resources coming from that you are talking about using and reforming elsewhere in the public sector? What is that reform?
First of all, my opponents, when I say resources, I mean the pen, the paper, the book, the computers that we have. But if you're going to talk about the money, our JCSA president has been lobbying for increasing the collectibles on the books. So, for example, littering, it's a small amount of money. You can pull it from that. You can utilize the technology, the underutilized government policies, government institutions. You can have increased private sector partnerships. There are many ways you can pull money from without affecting the public sector's livelihood.
Ways that are currently being discussed in the same union notion that you have proposed. It is the union president who had said that there are a lot of outdated laws and things in the system in the public sector that can be corrected to get funds.
Annually, ministries, departments, and agencies return over 20% of their capital goods and services budget. Clearly, it is not a resource issue. Isn't the resource gap the people?
Go again, please.
Annually, ministries, departments, and agencies return over 20% of their capital and goods and services budget. So clearly, it's not a resource issue. Isn't the resource gap the people?
My opponent, even if the resource is the people, we can concede to that. But what we cannot concede to is that these people are intrinsically driven by motivation, by incentive, and that they prefer to be incentivized over being given job stability, job security in the public sector, which is what the public sector is run on. And so again, we can incentivize these people all we want, but these people are also intrinsically motivated, and we must account for that. We must account for 20 years, they have given their best to this sector, and that is a service thing. You have not justified cutting their base pay for said incentives.
We will add that we are ISO certified, we are professionals, we know what we're doing.
And that is time for the cross-examination. My God, what a debate. All right.
We can ask them questions?
Yeah, man. So at this point in time.
You can.
At this point in time, we invite Team Admin GD to pose their questions.
So, my opponents, the purpose of the restructuring of the recent restructuring of the public sector was to level the playing field. Wouldn't you agree that your policy is ultimately a step back in the wrong direction, violating the spirit of recent negotiations?
No, because the second speaker would have spoke about the characterization or the categorization of public sector work, job description based on the recent compensation review. And what we are doing is building on that, building on the current PMAS system. So we are not starting from scratch. We are building on what currently works in the public service.
And we're also advancing what has been effectively implemented globally in other countries that have seen advancements, as we've mentioned in the first speaker's presentation, up to 25% in productivity and increased overall national revenue and GDP development. I mean, as the previous speaker just highlighted, and our second speaker highlighted, we are building in systems and structures with safeguards that protect the employee from these structures that would inhibit them from earning the additional incentives that will ensure that their jobs remain stable, their pension remains stable, and they are not demotivated from taking vacation, from taking maternity leave, from taking sick leave, because they will have a structured floor that provides them with a livable wage that they can manage on, and through their own ingenuity, they can advance and earn more sooner, which also adds to the overall national productivity, which essentially will fund that additional money that they will be earning.
My opponents, you mentioned a policy implemented by South Korea. But countries with successful performance-based systems typically have strong administrative infrastructure and digital monetary system. Can proposition demonstrate that in Jamaica currently?
And how do we move forward for that
And
before?
that is one question. Yes, you may go ahead with your answer to the... Yes, you may answer, you may repeat the question. The first question.
My opponent, you mentioned South Korea, but countries with successful pay-for-performance system typically have strong administrative infrastructure and digital monitoring system. Can proposition demonstrate that Jamaica has this currently?
You know what's amazing? You're saying that the workers are the best in the public service and that we don't need to change anything. But in the other breath, you are doubting our capability to implement reform. There are many agencies like Customs that already implement PMAS, that already have performance incentives. You spoke about RGD yourself. So we have the capacity in the public service. You can't say you believe in the public service and then on the next hand you're saying that you doubt our capability to implement reform.
And that is simply because no human system is perfect. And the question of the day today is not whether performance systems create perfection. It is actually whether rewarding productivity creates better outcomes versus rewarding time and tenure alone in the public service.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause the debate for just 1 minute. That minute is to allow the finishing touches to be placed on those reply speeches, after which we'll hear from the final two debaters in this match, starting with the opposition reply speaker. Your 1 minute break starts now. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite the final speaker from Team Administrator General's Department. Please make welcome Marissa Moore.
All protocol observed. Mr. Speaker, the proposition to reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector is not only absurd, it is also inequitable and will result in financial devastation for the Jamaican people. We heard from the proposition. First of all, the proposition totally missed the mark. They completely redefined the moot, suggesting a wage freeze, when the moot specifically said reducing base salaries. They framed it and masked it as modernization. They mentioned a policy in South Korea that was successful, but what they failed to share is that Jamaica and South Korea don't have the same infrastructure and to support such a policy. They also talk about the evaluation period and how they are going to ensure that they secure and safeguard public sector workers, talking about giving us a maths class about 3 times the salary. But aren't you shooting yourself in the foot? Because didn't you talk about a wage free, talk about the wage issue? How would Jamaica recover from that? Mr. Speaker, they talk about tenure. But tenure and performance is not mutually exclusive. Mr. Speaker, Team Opposition would have had this debate won from the moment we laid irrefutable foundational arguments supporting our claims. Our first speaker demonstrated that cutting base pay will accelerate catastrophic brain drain, undoubtedly resulting in system collapse. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica is already hemorrhaging talent. The moment you turn income into a lottery, the skilled and the mobile will not wait around to see if they win. They will just leave. Cutting base pay will cause Jamaica to lose its best and brightest minds. Can you imagine a Jamaica where classrooms have children but no teachers, hospitals with sick people but no doctors and nurses, or no one at customs to protect our borders? What about the economic consequences? Lowering base pay will reduce public sector's workers' access to mortgages, loans, pensions, and financial security, because these, Mr. Speaker, are calculated using guaranteed salaries, not unpredictable bonuses. Can you imagine a customs officer securing Jamaica's border, but not able to secure a loan to buy their own home? Furthermore, at the national level, fluctuating incentive payments would expand Jamaica's wage bill and threaten economic stability. Mr. Speaker, we outlined how favoring performance-based incentives within the already bureaucratic Jamaica is dangerous and will lead to distorted reporting, with employees focused more on meeting target rather than genuinely serving the public, as what occurred in Rwanda. Mr. Speaker, Team Opposition told us that cutting base pay will kill psychological safety. And when psychological safety dies, innovation and teamwork dies. We gave you compelling evidence about how pay insecurity negatively affects work performance. And the real value of our arguments is this, Mr. Speaker. The public sector hinges on intrinsic motivation. Fear does not breed excellence. It breeds silence. And a silent, scared workforce cannot perform, cannot adapt, and cannot serve. Cutting base salary also comes at a moral and ethical cost. It is a unilateral and damning change. Public sector employees will become financially precarious if base pay is reduced. We describe this policy as unethical, arbitrary, and cruel. The state requires its citizens to trust institutions, obey the law, and pay taxes on time. However, the state loses that moral right to demand excellence when it tells its employees that your mortgage is optional. The cost of unethical governance is not abstract. This generation of public employees will come to believe that the government is a poor employer and an untrustworthy institution. So, Mr. Speaker, We also gave you our model, the Stability Accelerator, a system that addresses performance-based pay without reducing base salaries. We propose timely incentives, fair distribution, and accurate performance measurement. This model cannot succeed if we begin by cutting the guaranteed salaries of these employees. Mr. Speaker, the government cannot cut base salaries because it triggers institutional collapse. The system cannot support it. It destroys the psychological safety of public employees, accelerates brain drain, and comes at a severe and moral and ethical cost. Do not sink the boat just to wave a flag. We beg to oppose. The opposition rests.
Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this debate, we invite the final speaker from the Jamaica Customs Agency. Please make welcome Kingsley Henry.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. When we listen to the opposition, you think that staying the course and doing the same thing over and over is going to yield a different result. But there's a name for that, right? We call it madness. So we talk about intrinsic motivation among public sector workers. Look here, our motto at Customs is country above self, so we know about intrinsic. But I'm motivated by the salary I get, which is why all of us as public sector workers now are wondering what is happening with the wage negotiation right now. Are we getting 2%? Are we getting 5%? Are we getting 7%? That is what we are concerned about. And I'm sure every day down at Admin General, that's what you are thinking about, how much more you're going to have to pay us at Customs, right? I know that. But at the end of the day, we have laid out the argument very clearly for you, that we are not cutting base pay. We're not saying today on day one you're working $2 million, take it down to 1.9. That's not what we're saying. We are saying what we have seen over the last decade is that every year public sector wages increase. You are guaranteed, if you perform well, a performance incentive increment of 2.5%. So you're getting that. But what we are saying is, do we want to go back to the days of wage freeze? I have been in customs over 23 years. I know what it's like to work a few years without any increase. That is what threatened my mortgage. I know what it's like to work on the threat that the government might cut the public service. That insecurity, that is instability. And what we are saying, we cannot continue down this road. The fact that the government of Jamaica is spending almost 50% of revenue on public sector salary, it is crowding out the services. When you go to the hospital at Cornwall Regional and you sit in the chair, a wheelchair for 24 hours. The reason why you do that is because it's a resource issue, because the government have to be spending most of the tax revenue paying us. And what we are saying, if you're spending that amount of money paying us, the productivity must speak for itself. How do we propose to pay for these increases? If you increase efficiency within the public sector, you reduce the costs. And if you increase efficiency in the public sector and productivity, the spin-off, it will be cheaper for the private sector to do business in Jamaica. And their productivity and their output will increase. That will increase GDP. That will increase government income. And that will be able to sustain a system of compensation. For us, it is easy. What you propose as a status quo is unfair. It is unfair for people who turn up to work every day and work to get the same pay for somebody who turn up and sign the register. We are all public servants. And we're not saying that public servants are lazy. They are not. They are some of the hardest working people. We went through Hurricane Melissa and we saw the heart of the public service. But all of us have enough workers in our agency, ministries, and departments that are not pulling their weight. And you can't tell me, so when you get your paycheck, you know, I think Satana here who go up on the road every lunchtime and stay out there for 3 hours is getting the same pay as you. I am human, and that for me is not fair. So for us, what we are proposing is a system that is fair. The choice, Mr. Speaker, before this House is simple. Reform or a return to the days of wage freezes and public sector staff cut. The opposition asks Jamaica to continue a system where compensation is tied to presence, where workers who not turn up get the same pay as those who turn up. We reject that categorically. We are proposing a fairer system because Jamaican taxpayers don't just want public sector workers to show up, they want us to deliver. They need hospitals that provide and pay attention to patient outcomes. We want our schools to work. We don't want our teachers to be running away. You talk about brain drain. We have a brain drain crisis because we do not reward excellence in the public service. So what we are proposing is not your problem with brain drain. It is what is happening now. So guess what? As opposition, you brought fear. But guess what we bring? We brought reform and a hope for a sustainable compensation system. We say reward excellence. What you say? Normalize mediocrity and entrench the current system that doesn't work. We say reward performance. You say, let us continue to just pay you because you turn up. And ultimately, Mr. Speaker, the opposition is defending a ceiling on public sector ambition while we are trying to build a ladder that rewards achievement in the public sector. Jamaica cannot modernize the public service with a compensation system that treats excellence and underperformance as equal. So guess what we're looking for? We're looking for accountability. And it is easy to talk about Rwanda, what worked and what didn't work in Rwanda. But guess how we fix that? The second speaker did point out that our system has safeguards. You and your union representatives will be involved in creating this system of performance management and appraisal that will hold you accountability or hold you accountable. Thank you.
Well, well, well. That doesn't feel like a first round match, right? They brought their game, so let's give them one final round of applause. We've just witnessed the Jamaica Customs Agency in proposition and the Administrator General's Department in opposition debating the moot, be it resolved that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. That was indeed a great match. The judges will now deliberate. I hope not for too long, Ravon. This is a final match in preliminary round 2, and indeed a fitting way to bring the curtains down on this round. We'll be back in about 15, 20 minutes. Well done, teams. All the best.
and cross-examinations that we had. However, it's important to note that this debate did have some flaws. Despite these flaws, of course, it was still high scoring because you guys are good at your craft, but there were some flaws that I think is important to point out. The moot, be it resolved that Jamaica should reduce base salaries in favor of higher performance-based incentives in the public sector. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Every single moot has to have mutually exclusive bounds, right? It means that both teams cannot be functionally arguing for the same thing. When we craft the moots and test them, we ensure that both sides of the moots are fair. There's evidence and research available to defend both sides of the moot, and therefore we're expecting both teams to stick to the hard line of the moots, making relevant concessions where they're necessary. We think, though, that that isn't necessarily what happened in this debate, and it made it a little bit kind of messy. So the moot specifically asks for proposition to reduce base salaries. Now, as pretty and as mechanistically profound as the policy that came from proposition was, it was not a reduction. It was a wage freeze, right? Like functionally, it's a wage freeze. So prop explains that, well, it is kind of a reduction because of the forces of inflation and the fact that you won't be able to negotiate for higher salaries and this and that. And they mechanize to an extent how it is that what you have now is going to be less than what you'll have in the future. Therefore, it is functionally a reduction. We didn't buy it. We think that what you've described is a wage freeze being acted upon by the forces of inflation. And so we think that you missed the burden right there in terms of what the debate was asking for. Nevertheless, there were some good things that you did, and I want to talk about them for just a bit, right? So first and foremost, we got an interesting policy coming out from First Speaker, Mr. Matthew Smith Barrett. He points out that, quite frankly, our bill is high, and what this is going to do is functionally reduce waste and improve efficiency. He points out that the public sector wages as exist right now are like 40% of our national budget, and that if we don't do something about this, it's going to lead to a deleterious outcome at the end of it. He points out, however, that if we were to increase performance by the public sector, there is like an oversized return on investment that we get from that. He points, for example, to South Korea. They did exactly what the motion was asking of them to do, what the moot was. They cut base pay, right? And then they increased the cut base pay by 15%, and then increased performance base by a maximum of 40%. And they got a 25% increase in productivity in 5 years. He then goes on to impact that by saying just a 1% increase in productivity is, as he calculates, a 25% reduction in our tax burden. Those are compelling figures. Those are figures we think that absolutely justify the base cut, and we buy that to a great extent coming out from Mr. Matthew Smith Barrett. Again, what we got from him in terms of this mechanism on fixed salary, we didn't necessarily buy. Now then, what did we get from team opposition? We taught in training that when it is that you find that somebody has intentionally or unintentionally misrepresented the moot, your job is to state it unequivocally and explain why it is that you don't think this is a debate that needs to be happened. To your credit, Jessica Lewis, you pointed out that you are against the reduction, but you left it there. We don't know why you're against the definition of reduction. We don't know why you think that prop has done something bad. We don't know why it is that you don't want this debate to continue like that. You simply point it out. We think that there's a lot more work that needs to be happening from the opposition leader, right? Because you are the flag bearer of your team to point out that we don't agree with what prop has done, and the judges need to take a stop, listen, and not bite. And so we want to point that out to you. Right? But then what did we get functionally from Jessica? Jessica tells us that what's actually going to happen is a bunch of brain drain, and that people are going to leave as a result of this because it's going to cause bad outcomes. It's essentially putting a carrot on a stick and forcing our poor public sector workers to pant after it month after month after month, and that's unfair. And in the context of people already leaving, it's likely that they're going to move on. We also get two more arguments, and we think these two arguments are more compelling than the first. You point out that, quite frankly, It is a base salary that is used by financial institutions to determine whether or not somebody qualifies for a loan or to qualify for whatever set of financial instruments that they want from these financial institutions. And at the point in which we cut base pay, all of a sudden my pension, my mortgage, and other such financial institutions, I have less value being coming out of that, and that's bad, and that's really dangerous. That was good. We also loved as well your argument on corruption, and how it is that people will now be incentivized to gamify the system because now my salary is cut, a lot of my money is going to simply come from, these performance-based incentives, and that is where I'm now going to start cheating the system. We got that. Now, coming out later on in the debate, especially from the cross-examination, we got even deeper analysis of these ideas. We heard, for example, that really terrifying case study of that country who there was a performance-based incentive for, yes, Kenya for vaccines, and what actually happened is that they pulled away the individuals from the maternity ward, and we hit that KPI, yay, but that actually led to an outcome, an increase in maternity deaths. We think that's compelling evidence and example of how it is that people cheat the system and how cheating the system leads to bad outcomes. Moving on into the debate. And if you see me talking for a while, it's because I truly did enjoy this debate. But I'm going to wrap it up in just a bit. So what we get as well is that from prop, we get that great return on investment, justification for the reduction, and this interesting idea. In second up, they point out that there is going to be a lack, that the real problem is a lack of resources. We get that coming out from first up. It's a lack of resources why it is that people aren't performing, and so simply doing this is not going to solve the problem. The answer to that point of information is that, well, we're going to hear it coming out later in our second speech. And then in the second speech, we hear that kind of answer. We hear an addendum to the policy that comes from first. Again, one of the things that I say, it's bad strategy. We want to hear the policy come out from the Prime Minister. That's your job, Mr. Prime Minister. It can be unfair for us to discredit the arguments that come from first opposition because it is answered in a policy that comes from second proposition. At that point in time, we have to credit to the greatest extent the arguments and criticisms that come from first opposition because that's a policy that is hard, and the expectation is that the policy is going to be provided in its full sum from first prop. And so it's not sufficient to just say, well, my second prop's policy answers for these problems. We credit it, yes, because that's how you want to use your time, but we cannot discredit the concerns raised from first up for that lack of answers to the policy. Running into more of the debate, we understand coming out from second up the psychological damage that comes from this and how that has really deleterious effects on the individual. These concerns are great, mechanized wonderfully, and we don't get a substantive response to those concerns coming out from team opposition. And so, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of what was a fun and engaging debate, the scores ending the round: 287 points to the winning team, to 284 points to the team that will not gain that automatic 3 points. That is a 3-point difference in the total team scores. Again, despite the deficiencies that existed in the debate, still a high-scoring debate. These are excellent debaters. Ladies and gentlemen, the winners of this match and the team that secures for themselves 3 points is the team in opposition to the Administrator General Department. Congratulations, Team Admin GD. Very well played, Team Jamaica Customs Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, the best debater from this match also comes to us from Team Admin GD, and that is their second speaker, Cudian King. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're tuning in and you're tallying the scores, you know which 16 teams will be advancing to the octafinals. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful rest of your day.